Okay, guys, we are back. Thank you for joining us again on this first episode of Stand the Gap podcast in association and partnership with the Mississippi Conservative Coalition to become the Youth Conservative Coalition for the state of Mississippi. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be targeting the 18 to 40-year-olds in the state, the youth arm of the Conservative Coalition alongside a lot of the groups that are already established. We'll be working with Turning Point. We'll be working with the Mississippi GOP. We'll be working with several groups that are pushing the conservative message, and then we'll be focusing on our young people. Like I said, 18 to 40, that's really where we want to make sure that we're trying to get as much engagement as possible, because that's where we can turn needles, right? That's what part of what, Turning Point and Charlie's mission was doing, and we're just trying to focus that more grassroots to where you're seeing local faces that we are more in your schools. There's more ease of contact. We'll be doing seminars, classes, a lot of educational resources, ways to connect with nonprofits and charities that are aligned with conservative values. So, again, part of what we're doing tonight is we covered some of the mission and some of what we're doing, and as well as kind of a homage to what this mission is from here, what's going on close to us, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on a national level here. President Trump says the war is over. That's right. If you know what I'm talking about, he is on his way to Israel. As of today, as of Friday, they signed a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. So if you know anything about that, October 7th, 2023, attacks on southern Israel by Hamas-led groups killed about 1,200 people and 250 taken hostage. That's kind of where it all started a couple years ago. You may remember the whole Ukraine thing was really kicking up at that point. But President Trump from Air Force One said that this is going to be a board of peace, that what they have going now is really supposed to be the end all be all, if you will. Hostages are supposed to be released tomorrow by 10 o'clock, I believe. But since this all started, more than 7,000 Palestinians have been killed, including more than 18,000 children. Ceasefire took place Friday. First phase of the 20-point peace plan brokered by Trump, with more phases still set to be put into place. 20 of the Israeli hostages are said to still be alive. And then Hamas is also still set to release the remains of almost 30 deceased hostages. So they still have these people. It's really important that Israel gets them home. I think everybody's kind of happy about what's going on, and they want to keep it going that way. So kudos to Trump on his peace skills. Egypt's foreign ministry even said that a document ending the Gaza Strip, the war in the Gaza Strip, is expected to be signed. So everybody's kind of huddled around this, kind of sick of it, kind of tired of it. Like I said, Trump will be in Israel on Monday, and he's supposed to address the country through the parliament there. Aid trucks have already started to enter Gaza. So hundreds of more were equipping at the border, but they said it's going to take something like 600 trucks a day to even get it back to where it needs to be, just because of the huge humanitarian crisis going on there. So prayers for what's going on there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and how it reflects on us, and how I think we should be looking at it. We'll get more into the, I guess you could say, technical aspects of it right now. Just kind of want to give you an idea of what's going on over there. But Palestinians returning to the northern Gaza had described scenes of devastation. So that place for the past, like I said, couple of years has been an absolute war zone. And there's a lot, that kind of constitutes what it was. Israel being attacked, Israel defending itself, back and forth. There's been a lot that has come out of it. And I think it's important to understand, just because, that was one of the big issues, especially surrounding Charlie and what he was doing. But, I will say this. I will say, like I said a second ago, kudos to President Trump. Guys, I'm not like an idolizer. I've never been one, but you have to recognize, you just have to recognize, like, stuff getting done and people getting things done, and they're not perfect. Like, I don't think these people, like, don't stink, like, I don't believe that for a second, but you have to recognize that God's working in their favor in places. How do you ignore it? Like, I don't understand. I guess I do understand. It's hard. It's hard to accept that, something that you were against or maybe just didn't really agree with turned out to be right. That's called swallowing your pride. With Israel and what's going on, it has been super complicated, and it's going to be complicated for a while. But, since the beginning of time, people have always, argued, like, what's Israel? Do we, support Israel or, the 1978 Israel when they changed their borders then? Truth is, Israel's borders have changed repeatedly, not only in the text field, but also just kind of, all throughout, the book. So you have to look at it, especially with what was going on in the day, from Genesis, to descriptions in the book of Numbers. Like, things change. So, people say, I support Israel, and they're like, well, you support which Israel? Like, how big is Israel? Where are the borders of Israel? It gets pretty complicated, and without getting into too much detail, I'll try to skim through just what I've collected is kind of like an idea of way to look at it, and then how to kind of look at it in a general sense. Because then later, even in the period of Judges and Kings, you see that Israel's lines kind of changed again. I think the first big definition of Israel's borders, like I said, appears in Genesis, when Lord made the covenant with Abram, saying that, your descendants, I give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river of Euphrates. If you take that literally, it would encompass a pretty vast majority. Egypt would. And then, in Genesis 21, we read, Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines many days. So again, it describes something a little bit different. Exodus 23, I will set your borders from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, meaning the Mediterranean, and from the desert to the river. But some could ask, what is meant by the river? Which river? The Euphrates. In today's Iraq, that suffers from a bit of a problem because the Israelis are on the east side of the Jordan River, and looking at geography and stuff like that, that's where it starts to get technical. And again, we're talking about borders and lines here. And like I said, then in the book of Numbers, and then the Bible really leaves it open to the possibility of the borders of expansion. And some would even say, it didn't. It was just that one, closed area, and then it stopped, or it expanded, then it shrunk, and then it changed, and So how is this all related to, the modern contemporary situation? Well, I think first, clearly, the historical land of Israel never had one definitive border, if you will. It was the people, right? It was saying, like, your people are going to have this land, and, it's going to be for you. Second, the Bible and the commentators, I think we're okay with it, that it wasn't like it's this one box square, 100 by 100 miles, and that's it. Like, because it was called to go and disciple of nations. God even said there are nations and herds that are of another. Like the land may grow. And then third, I think the central thing kind of derived from the first two is that despite like all the original eschatological descriptions of Israel's future in the borders, all of Jewish history and actual descriptions were really based on like the real politics of the day and what was going on, the specific situations of the time. So it's really hard to tell, and it's really, I think anyone can point to this border or that border as the true border, but I think the point is that we're supporting God's Israel. And you have to be very careful. I think you have to look at all the things going on because, things change and people change and there's, really bad people in good places and vice versa. And I don't, I think we have to look at it as a guideline and as a map, but we also have to use some common sense, and we have to look like, hey, is this really what we're supporting, and or is this justified, and is this, does this make sense? And we can get into more of that later, but I think just in general that kind of explains a little bit about, should I be anti or against Israel? I think you should be for Israel. I think you should pay attention to what's going on in Israel. I also think that, we may have, I say this lightly, but overemphasize what we put into it. And I may be wrong on that, but I think that's a lot of people are coming to consensus to, just because that we may have strayed away from supporting the idea of Israel, and the people in the nation, and more into the supporting the modern Israel and the politics of today, which I don't think was quite the intent. And I think that's really what Charlie was saying. I think that's how we can really measure up what he was doing and what he was saying, because that's what he was saying. Like, he was saying to support Israel from the beginning on where it came from and the idea of what it is, not necessarily, what's going on, like the ideas or, the actions that are happening right now. Like, you have to look at that, because somebody can look at that and think like, this looks like some really bad stuff. And then from the other side, they're going to say we're 100% justified in what we're doing. And it's really just, how you support it and how you look at it. And I think it's hard for, a lot of us that have grown up knowing like we support Israel, like Israel to the end, no matter what. Because that creates, kind of a dangerous place to be, because, let's just say something's going on in a place that you don't know about, and then all of a sudden you're supporting something that should not be supported. So I think we should, with that, Charlie said, and I agree, we should also worry about our borders first, and what we're doing here and what we can affect here. Because while that is important, we have a generation, like we'll get back to now, that is really in need of leadership. And I think we have to understand our roles as leaders first before we can even look at people like Trump or people like, Bibi and think like, oh, we don't even understand that. Because I think when we see this, then we can see that's how it's supposed to be. Now, let me put myself in their shoes. And you can really, perspective is a powerful thing. You can put yourself in just about anybody's shoes and have a conversation with yourself and, really come to some profound conclusions, or at least ideas of what people are thinking, because, we see everything through this lens. We are programmed to see the world as we want to see it. and what our ideas are. And when you can take yourself out of that, it really opens you up, uh, to understanding your role as an influence in somebody else's life, and hopefully a good one, because in order to nurture those around us, I think you have to understand who you are. Because if you're just spewing it, and not living it or walking it, it's going to catch up to you. And when I say that, to say that, over the past, couple years, really hard over the past year, God was just slowly stripping things away, for me out of my life that just weren't serving me. Whether it was, bad habits or things that distracted me, or putting too much into things that just didn't matter like I thought they did. You name it, I was probably, distracted by it. And, leadership isn't just about having authority, but it's about, having self-control, being not self-serving, guiding, uplifting others with our actions and with our words. And when we recognize that our leadership stems from God, we can lead a lot more with love and purpose, as opposed to just, I'm your boss and this is the way it is and this is what I'm going to tell you, and you just don't need to worry about, anything else. That response will get you the exact same thing back. When people don't feel like you care about them, you can say it all you want to, but, whenever you're not coming at them, from what the Bible offers us and multiple insights into what it means to be a leader, it reminds us that it's about, being a steward who encourages others to shine to their God-given light. I don't think we always see that. And I think even sometimes as, employers or peers, it's hard for us to see. So we're like, man, he's really good at this. Like, you should be doing that. And we don't look past the talent as opposed, and look at the heart, right? Like, because the heart can take the talent somewhere the talent could never dream of. And in youth leadership, especially, we have the chance to not just lead, but to inspire trust and to get, younger people showing others the way and how to grow in faith. So First Timothy says, Timothy 4 says it really good. 4:12, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example for the believers in speech, conduct, and love and faith and in purity. I'm 35, I'll be 36 in a couple days, an amazing opportunity as a younger generation right now where we are. I think we are so smart. I think we're one of the last great generations where we have parents and grandparents that are just the last bit of the true what America is, and we have that in us. And I think we want that, and we want to keep that going. It's just like a lot of noise going on. And then we have like this young generation. We're like, man, I really am worried about them. But we have like, oh man, 120% ability to mentor and steward and just raise arrows to go out into this world. And I was, I was terrified when I found out that we were going to be, we had the opportunity to adopt, and we were going to, go from a family of 3 to a family of 6. And now I look at it like, man, I cannot wait. Like, I can't wait to, show these kids and minister these kids to go out into the world and do stuff. And just, I didn't always have it, when I was younger. So to be that for them, and if you don't have kids, I encourage you to, get involved in your church. If you don't have a church, find a church, get involved in a youth group. But even so, that's what Stand the Gap is going to be doing. We're going to have hopefully a plethora of young people, 18 to 40, that are looking for mentors, people that are looking for peers, people that are looking for like-minded friends and Christians to hang out with, to talk politics with, to talk business with, to talk religion with. It's going to be that space. It's going to be that space, y'all. We want, those people to do business with each other. We want them to know each other. And because that leads to people leading with integrity. When we see what others are doing and others are seeing what we're doing, and it's not so much of I thought that, just off topic real quick, the problem with religion and politics is just that you didn't talk politics in church because the political game was so ugly, or whatever you want to call it. And then you almost didn't talk religion and politics because it was like the clean thing. It was, politics involved, expensive dinners and nice bourbon and, compromising with pride and selfishness at times. Maybe even thinking you're better than people, or better than people, just because of the position you hold. That creates a government and a world that is dangerous. And on the flip side, you would almost not talk politics in church just to keep it clean. Like, we don't want to bring that in church because it's just so bad, and it's just bad. It's just we gotta go to church to get our armor, and then we go back out into the field and fine. That's true. I believe that, but I want more political advice from my pastors and from people like that really understand it better than I do. I know what I don't know, and I know that I am not can just spit it out as I should be able to. However, I can understand it, and I've read it, and I believe it now more than ever. And so our youth leadership, journey has to be marked by integrity. The way we conduct ourselves speaks volumes about our character and our relationship with God. Integrity means being honest, trustworthy, steadfast in our beliefs. It's about aligning our actions with our faith and being consistent in our decisions, right? So this is essential to youth leadership, as those we lead to look for a model. They look to us for a model of integrity, helping them to develop their own values and principles grounded in biblical truth. They're going to be looking. I have 8 little sets of eyes, which, go from 4 kids to 8 sets of eyes. It's staring at me every day, watching what I do, how I talk to their mother, how I treat their mother, what I practice, what I preach, everything. We earn the respect and the confidence of, those kids, and then they earn our respect back, because we're leading them to pursue a deeper connection with God. We're not just saying, hey, be a good business person, do good business, but you have to tell them where it comes from and why, otherwise it doesn't matter. Some of you may have seen our lemonade stand posts with the kids, but they were like, hey, we're insistent on putting together a lemonade stand, and I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to keep God in your business, and what are you going to do for God and his kingdom through your business? And they decided to hand out cards to our church, and also give a mint with their cups of lemonade. And then also they were going to donate the money to charity. So, they were, I'll be honest, guys, I did not think that they would have one person come through because we live on a fairly quiet road. And, you know, first person that came by, um, handed him a bill that was worth way more than the cup of lemonade. And they came up super duper excited. Obviously, they're like, we made this from, one cup and da da da. And then by the end of the day, they had made over like $50. Did not sell $50 worth of lemonade, but obviously people came by and just took care of them and saw what they were doing, and they told me, well, we prayed about it, silently in the van earlier together, that God would send a lot of people down our road to help us. So, call it their marketing, or call it their praying. They knew, and they figured out what walking with integrity was early on. Proverbs 10:9 says, whoever walks with integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will find out. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out every time. Maybe sooner, maybe later. But walking securely feels a whole lot better, and that's what I try to explain to my kids, is that when you're doing these things and you're doing them ethically and you're doing them with integrity, you're doing it for God and the betterment of His kingdom. He will provide for you, and then even if things don't go the way you expected them to, thank Him anyways for the lesson you learned, for the experience you got. Don't worry about the naysayers and the judgment cast before you. That's going to come. You learn 1,000 ways to not do something before you do it right the first time. And if we stopped, after not getting it right the first time, or because somebody says, hey, it wasn't that great, where would we be? That's where a lot of our young people are. They don't have enough supporters. They don't have enough people in their corner encouraging them. Peter 3:16, keeping a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. Y'all, everybody's going to have something to say. People are going to have something to say about this. I don't care. I think I cared for a long time. And I think that, I always knew that God wanted to use me somehow. But I was always trying to, maybe use it for myself. And while, things may have seemed, or, good or successful or whatever, the truth is that, it's not until you surrendered everything to God that you can live in that clear conscience that, God's with me, nothing can be against me. I've cleaned my soul, my life, my being of who I was and what I'm becoming. And it's empowering. And I think whenever you can get to that point, because it's there for all of us, every single one of us, it's so neat to know that, because I think it all the time. I'm like, man, like, I am nobody. Like, I have, but that's the enemy. And then God's like, no, like, you go, like, go. open your mouth, say something, do it, tell them about how I saved your life. And isn't that all of us? Isn't that every single one of us? Now, everybody's different. We all go through different things, but one of the most, I think, beautiful aspects of leadership is empowering other people. The Bible teaches us the importance of recognizing and nurturing the gifts in others and their talents, and in those we lead. By empowering others, we not only help them grow, but we also help them create a legacy that will carry over to other leaders in the future. So it's about creating an environment, where everyone feels valued and encouraged. And I'm not talking about the feel good, you're special, you're great, you're going to do great things. You are, but you have to meet God there too. It's not just going to, magically appear out of thin air. He will. Then you have to make a choice to go with him. So when we empower others, we build a strong community of faith where everyone plays a part in God's greater plan. Just like I said, there's a greater plan. There's much more that he has in store for us. It's just a matter of us getting there. Ephesians 4:11-12. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, the teachers to equip his people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up. I think Charlie was one of those. And, that says a lot. I heard in part of our message last night where, how to match up what he was doing against the Bible and the works. It says that the things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to the reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. I think he was one of those. I don't see how, again, we ignore it. I think I understand, because we've just been so, taught to not cross those lines. 1 Peter 4:10 says, each of you should go and use whatever gifts you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God, as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. That's right, we've all received it. It is in various forms. Some of it, it's in our writing. Some of it, it's in our speaking. Some of it, it's in our cooking. Some of it, it is in our teaching. Everybody's different. It doesn't all have to be the same. What we have to understand is, I think of it all the time, and this is a big part of why we're doing this, is because I know that there's people that, let's just say Joe, that is a mechanic, how do I help? What do I do? Joe, man, I bet there's guys there at your shop that really need God. But first, we should fix ourselves. And then we should do like we just said. We should look to mentor and encourage and inspire and be leaders. But first, you have to be a good follower, and then you can lead. And I'm still learning. I don't claim to be some great leader. If anything, I'm a flawed follower that is learning, but I want other people to learn with me. I feel like when we talk about it more, when we discuss it more, and that's just kind of always been, part of me is, likes to debate, likes to talk, likes to, make a point. Maybe wasn't always making the right point, but now God has given me an opportunity to do this, to for whatever comes of it. We all have it, and I don't know why. I really don't. I just know that He's put it on my heart, and everything that over the past 10 years has been culminating to moments like this where thank God for people like Charlie and what they were doing. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't even somebody I knew personally, but it isn't hard for me to recognize good, because I've been in this space for a little while, so I understand it. And it's pretty easy to recognize good and bad. And sometimes it's it's not so easy. But like I said, when we have ourselves rooted, and we're not compromising, and we've accepted Jesus to lead us, and we are truly following, He's going to open up those abilities for us to see those other perspectives, and to really be able to make good decisions for our families and for our communities. Which kind of leads to the next thing. Government shutdown. Super exciting, right? Top Republicans and Democrats on Sunday dug their heels in. They said it is going to continue. Everybody wants to blame each other. Here we go, party and politics thing. We'll talk a little bit about how that kind of conforms, back to an aspect of how it should apply to us. Democrats are continuing to call for healthcare concessions before they vote to reopen the government's doors, says Hakeem Jeffries, House Minority Leader. He says people throughout this country should be able to afford to go see a doctor when they need one for themselves, their family, or their children. Democrats are citing that, they're trying to get continuing funding and breaks for Medicaid, Medicare, and Speaker Mike Johnson kind of hit back on the same program, saying that it's really been the Democrats who have voted to close the government, and it's a real pain for people. He says that they seem not to care, so it's kind of funny that one side's saying you're doing it, the other side's saying you're doing it, and then here we are in the middle, like, who's doing it? But meanwhile, President Trump started firing federal workers, because he did vow to continue paying members of the military, at least 4,000 civil service workers were notified October 10th that they were being laid off rather than simply being furloughed as in the past shutdowns. Civil servants got reduced paychecks on October 10th. And then military was actually expected to miss their first payments on October 15th, but we'll find out here in a minute. Trump actually found the money. National zoos, museums, several of them, including the Panda Cam, got taken offline. Their reason is because they just did not have the staff to run the Panda Cam that sits there and records the pandas. Not sure there. Marine Corps Marathon, that was expected to be later this month, is still going as planned. Planning preparations are still a go for those events. Others that are scheduled that kind of are that are government affiliated, that are kind of like extracurricular things that some people would think would be like canceled because there's not enough money to go around. I think I should say this, like, there's a lot of fluff in these places, like the museums, and I don't want to pinpoint too many. Department of Education, I'll pinpoint that one. There's a lot of fluff in these areas, y'all, and a lot of these positions were created through programs that were really just made to you've heard of the DEI inclusion policies and programs. A lot of them were for that. A lot of these people aren't even qualified to do those types of things. And instead of, the government paying, 60 grand, I don't know, to somebody that knows how to run the Panda Cam, that money can be going to other programs and things like that. So we have to trust what we're seeing. We have to recognize authority. The Social Security Administration will continue to issue retirement and disability benefits to people. Payments will continue into the Medicaid and Medicare healthcare programs. And then some people say, well, what about, Congress and the president? They still get paid? They do. President's salary, $400,000 a year. Generally not affected by a shutdown. With regards to President's paying, Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution forbids the salary of the president to be reduced while he or she is in office, therefore guaranteeing that he gets paid all the time. But during his first term, President Trump actually donated his salary to department agencies, and he plans on doing the same this term. So he's not getting paid. He's donating it all. Lawmakers will continue to receive their paycheck. However, some lawmakers have decided to not take compensation during the shutdown. Good for them. Good for them. Do teachers get paid during the shutdown? Well, for the most part, the Department of Education was hit with a big wave of layoffs. Golf clap. On October 11th, cutting roughly a fifth of the agency's already hamstrung workforce, for lack of a better term. Those staffing cuts could lead to a reduction of support and services for schools across the country. School teachers largely continue to get paid as most public schools are funded significantly through local and state means anyways. However, the shutdown is more acutely felt in some schools where government funding plays a larger role, which makes sense. And I think, that's those two sentences are a perfect example of get the federal government out of our schools, get rid of the Department of Education, keep it with local and state means, and that's where our teachers and our parents are going to have more influence anyways on the kids. That's where they're going to be able to protect this funding. That's where we're able to just have more of a grip on that and be able to manage it a little bit better. WIC, food aid, SNAP, all that stuff's going to keep going. None of that is affected. All those operations will continue during the shutdown. And then one of the things that, I wanted to recognize really quickly on just, recognizing authority. We often, I think, find ourselves in complex situations where, especially regarding the government and in control, society and how it is, we're like, they don't know what they're doing. Like, we could do better, or, they don't know what they're doing. I guess this is what you hear most of the time. But the Bible teaches us to recognize the authority established by God. And this doesn't mean we always have to agree with the government and the decisions that they're making, but it encourages us to respect those in authority as part of his divine order. God anoints and God appoints. People, get the leadership that they deserve. I firmly believe that, and I firmly believe that God did us a favor by the leadership that we have at the moment. And when we acknowledge this, authority, we can actually, like I said earlier, act wisely, knowing that God has a providential plan, even within our political system. Again, when we understand why and how, and then those people are there, and that why and how is translated into the politics, it makes a lot more sense for us. Thou shalt not steal. Your congressman isn't stealing. Good job, right? Thou shalt not steal. He's robbing the city or the state of funds, and they're not getting the things they need. But he's worth couple mil now. Not so good. So anyways, our calling is to both follow God's word and to be good citizens of our countries. We're also called to do something whenever things aren't right. We're called to rise up and revolt in the face of tyranny. Romans 13:1. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. God anoints and God appoints. Y'all, I don't say this too often publicly, but I ran for office and I lost, and it was because God wanted that to happen. There is a plan. There is a much bigger plan. Maybe this is it right now. I don't know. But I was okay with that. I was almost prepared for that. It was almost like I knew what I was getting into. And I was okay because I knew that, God was in control. And while, you see the hill you got to climb, you're okay when you're much more, as Charlie said, interested in what God wants from you than what you want from God. And honestly, those were things that I wanted from God. Sometimes he gave them to me. Sometimes he would straight hand them to me on a platter, like, here you go. Let's see what you do. And, sometimes they were handled well, and sometimes, I would self-destruct. And I say that to say, be very careful with God's blessings and not to abuse them. And especially if you're ever put in a position of leadership, to not abuse it. And if you're not, to pray for those people that are there, to not abuse it. Our responsibility, again, as Christians, extends to praying for our leaders. And when we engage in prayer for our country and for those in authority, we invite God's wisdom and guidance into their decisions. I pray I say it all the time, like, please pray for our local leaders, our pastors, our, politicians. And my kids are like, what? I'm like, yeah. They're like, wow, I don't understand. I'm like, because God needs to know that we are concerned about what's going on and we need him to intervene. And if enough of us are doing that, he will. He will either way, but if enough of us are praying and showing that we care, we're going to see that a lot easier. This can be, I think it's a powerful act of faith, reminding us of our role in spiritual warfare is that prayer. And as we pray, we open doors for divine intervention, and I think we encourage, like I said, peace within our communities whenever we're all doing that. And that just kind of, reflects outward. So I think let's be grounded in prayer for all of our leaders. Let's keep that in mind through the shutdown and through the things that they have going on. Trusting God to help them govern wisely and not just criticize, not just point fingers, not just like, oh, our museums are going to be closed, like all these, like, let's look at ourselves. What are we doing? How can we help this? What is it really affecting? Because let's face it, there's things out there affecting things that we don't like, that we can gripe and we can complain about. But do those things really matter? And are the things that matter to us getting the deserved attention they should? I did not. While this has been, like I said, years in the making, there is months and months of planning for this. whenever we decided this was going to happen. This was several months ago. You know, we were just kind of looking at what was next, politically and in this sphere of our life, because we always knew and wanted to do more than just, you know, profit ourselves and do well for ourselves. God has been beyond gracious to us, and we owe it to our kids, we owe it to Him, we owe it to our communities, to keep doing the stuff that, you know, let's face it, we're already doing. It was just a matter of directing it with the right energy towards the right energy. And thankfully, we prayed, I mean, several times a day, you know, and don't get me wrong, y'all, the enemy came hard when, you know, we decided that this is going to happen, this is what we were doing. I remember months ago, I was telling my wife, like, you know, buying equipment for our podcast and just getting everything ready, and honestly didn't even know. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't really know. Like, I just, like, God's telling me to get ready and, like, get this stuff and start putting this together, and this is, like, kind of what I'm seeing. And you know, if you look at this side of the wall in my office, it looks kind of crazy right now because there's, like, notes and strings and I'm just kidding. But it looks crazy because this all conceptualized from things that we had been praying about and talking about and just didn't understand. Honestly, still don't completely understand. But we know that God is calling us there, and He's opened up the doors for us to go. So when God says go, you know, we do not say no. We run as fast as we can, and maybe I should say jog, because you do need to look around and be aware of where you're going and what you're doing. Other than that, you know, as far as the government shutdown goes and what we have going on for our people, you know, there were some layoffs that came with it. 315 laid off in Commerce Department, 466 in the Department of Education, 187 in the Energy Department, 1,112 between 11 and 1,200 in the Department of Health and Human Services. Wonder why that one was so big. 442 in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, 176 in the Department of Homeland Security, and 1,400 in the Treasury Department. Not surprised. The cuts wiped out the Department of Education Special Office for Special Education and Rehabilitation Services. I don't know how that may sound. I would be interested in finding out more about that. I would think that nobody knows more about a child with special needs and what is best for them, especially with all of the information that has come out now about our healthcare system and what they did or did not know about children with special needs, specifically autism. Nobody knows more about what those kids need than their parents and their caregivers. Their teachers, their close family, their friends that take care of them every day. I'm sure there's experts out there. Don't get me wrong. I know there's experts out there. But I have friends with children with special needs, several of them, and it almost brings tears to my eyes to think that some bureaucrat in Washington knows what's better for those kids or that kid than that mother does. That, you know, that mother and that dad that have to, you know, have adapted their entire life to serving a whole different gift from God, and I commend them for that. Um, Sorry, no Department of Education can teach them how to be loving parents, because that's what kids like that need. Kids like that need patience. They need love. They need a nurturing that can't be provided by anybody else except their parents and just a few others really close to them. I truly believe that. Um, Trump vows to pay military despite funding lapse. So there was a threat that 1.3 million members of the military would miss their paycheck, but um, that became a pretty big argument for both sides. But Trump announced yesterday that the Pentagon found the money to pay the military, relieving the pressure to end the whole government shutdown sooner. So, here's what I'm seeing is they're pointing at this side, and this side's pointing to that side. But then, the Republican side, I'll just use the R's and the D's for the sake of conversation. It's like, okay, well, we'll pay them anyways. Now you still got to end the government shutdown. So it's kind of like, checkmate, checkmate, checkmate. Excuse me, check, check, check. In the sense of, okay, this is why we'll do that. Open it back up. You're not getting what you want. Oh, you think that's okay? It is an issue. We'll take care of that too. Open it back up because you're not getting what you want. It's really showing the colors here, and I encourage y'all to pay attention to that. Trump said, "I will not allow Democrats to hold our military and the entire security of our nation hostage with their dangerous government shutdown." Y'all, those are powerful words, and I get it. I understand it kind of can benefit both sides in a way. It kind of, both sides can hurt, but also don't care. This is a tactic that is being used. Not saying it's a good one, not saying it's a bad one, but it is a tactic that is used to get what they want. They're supposed to vote again on Tuesday to see if they can't reopen the government. And then on the 21st, that would open it back up until November 21st, excuse me. But there's even been Democrats that are sweeping over to the Republican side, trying to get this, trying to end the debate, trying to get things going, because they see that it's actually hurting our people, and it may be our side that's being kind of stubborn. And then you see the majority building and the majority trying to do the thing that, could encourage the better thing for the greater good. So again, it's that example of, people flock to the good, people go to the righteousness, tend to most of the time. I'm not saying it's all good, but they tend to seek what is right. The filibuster was an issue. Republicans hold a 53-47 majority in the Senate. So what does that mean? Under the chamber rules, a 60-vote majority is needed to end debate on legislation and send it to the president's desk. So they had those votes. They could just vote on it, send it to the president's desk, deal's over with. They don't have those votes yet. They're still looking for some Dems to come over. People that usually caucus the Democrats have been scooting over the Republican side to vote. But the 55 to 45 votes still isn't enough to hit that 60 threshold. So still conversations, unfortunately. There are Democrats that said they're meeting. I think they're coming back Tuesday, despite the government being shut down. They still feel like they need to be there doing stuff as they should. But, these guys tend to think that they work for themselves. So hopefully we'll see some traction there in the next couple of days. I think we will, because as we have seen, our people right now, and again, if you're not, you should be praying for them daily, are making moves, and they're making pretty decent moves that are they're not just sitting around and waiting per se for things to happen. So I think that's good, as opposed to just we'll let it run for a month or two and then decide what happens. drawing it out. It's just that's more theatrics, and I think we've seen through President Trump, especially. Like I said, kudos to him earlier on the peace deal. We'll get some things out of this as well. Real quick, we're going to talk about some local election stuff as soon as we come back.